man, Woody likes the crooked cock.
You called it the alcohol store.
The alcohol.
Whenever I go to the marijuana emporium, I'm just lost.
I'm just like, oh, there's all these like bad drinks around here, you know? Like, should
That's
I be
how I
ashamed?
feel when I walk into like Total Wine or something, and I don't know anything about wine really. I know that I like red more than white, but like I'll be walking through one of the 50 aisles trying to find a bottle of wine, and someone will be like, "Do you need any help, sir?" And no matter what I'm looking for, I always feel compelled to be like, "Oh no, I'm fine." When in reality, I'm like, "What does port mean, and where do I find it? Like, what color is that?
It means
What's a good brand
on a ship?
You know?" But a port is a dessert wine. You know, you have after dinner as you're watching.
It was the opposite of starboard.
So yes, it is a starboard.
I have another one. What piece of media that you remember very fondly as a child, but you've since revisited, only to realize that it's not at all how you remember it? Similar to how Taylor went to Chuck E. Cheese for pizza. Now, if I may jump in, because I've been considering it for the last couple minutes, man, there's a movie that I loved when I was 5 years old. It was my world. And that movie is He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, starring Dolph Lundgren.
Seen it.
And what's her name from Friends? The brunette. What's her name?
Courtney Cox, maybe?
Courtney Cox.
Yeah.
She's in there too. Yeah. Might be her first role. As a kid, I was like, I had the He-Man sword. And like when you hit stuff with it, it made sound effects like, and He-Man would go, "I have the power of the universe." And I would do that at 5 years old. I'd be on top of the dining room table. "I have the power of the universe." Mom would be like, "Get that off there." And I'd be like, crack her with the fucking sword. I love that shit. Those swords were like sold out that Christmas. It was a big fucking deal. He-Man was huge. He-Man toys came before the movie, if you can even envision a scenario like that. They made toys and they were like, "Hey, we should make a movie about these toys."
Really?
Not the other way around. Yeah. So I went and I watched that shit like a year ago. I watched He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It is an abomination of a movie. It is awful.
Did you watch it repeatedly as a kid? I'm asking in a roundabout way. Did your parents have to sit through that movie repeatedly as their son?
Well, I had my own TV in my room and like VHS and stuff like that. And there were movies that like I watched repeatedly over and over. Problem Child was one of those. I love that movie about the little kid who was just being a real piece of shit. But no, and things like Ghostbusters and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Those are the ones I watched on repeat. This one I probably watched like 4 or 5 times a year as a kid, like when I was 5 or something.
That's not even that much for a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, like there are kids who like watch the same shit every day when they get home from school. You know, they'll rewatch the same movie 100 times, but it's awful. It's awful looking back, and I kind of feel bad that it's awful. I was like, I wanted to be as good as what I remembered as a 5-year-old, and it's just not.
Yeah, I feel it. Something for me like that was Blank Check. That movie. Do you remember Blank Check?
Yep.
Came out. I just checked. Came out in 1994, and so I obviously saw it later because I was like 3 years old. And when I saw that, and it was like someone gave. I have so few memories of the movie itself. When someone gave this kid a blank check. He took it on his computer and typed in like different amounts onto it and was like, $1 million. And then he took a printed out check with $1 million on it and cashed it. And within like 30 minutes of the movie, he's got butlers. He's got a fucking slide coming out of his house. He's got bounce houses. He's got cotton candy machines. And I remember watching that at like 5 and 6 being like, this guy's got it figured out. And then later it was like, wait, you can't do that. You can't take a check, scan it, put your own information in Times New Roman, and then take it to the bank.
It was like a very specific scenario that allowed that to go down. Like the account, like the account that the money came out of, they had like stolen that money, and the bankers were expecting someone to come and like get that money that day. They're like, "Don't worry, someone's coming to pick up the cash." And then this kid showed up, and he's like, "You?" He's like, "Yep, it's me." And he's like, "Sir," he like calls the guy. He's like, "Your agent is here. You're sure you want me to give the money to him? You give him that fucking money. I don't want to talk about this again. He's like, all right. He's just like, here's your $1 million, little boy.
But yeah, that movie as a kid was so cool because I remember in kindergarten, like $1 million to a child that's such a number that it doesn't make any sense. It's just infinite. It's infinite to a child. The same way that I remember talking to a couple girls and a couple guys in my kindergarten class. We're all fucking 5 or whatever. And a topic of conversation was like, do you think so-and-so's family is worth $100? And we'd be like, you think we'd be going to this school if they had $100 to spend? No, there's no way. Ruth's parents have $100, and they'd be like, Taylor, do you think your parents have $100? I'm like, probably not, man. 100, a full, like that's how how it is, like how money works.
No, that sounds a little retarded to me.
Well, it wasn't just me. We didn't know.
Well, when you're in the special ed class, I'm sure a lot of that goes around.
This doesn't
like,
fit
you think
this.
Your family's worth $100? Like, I'm not. I don't think what you're saying.
Doesn't fit the question entirely, but Star Wars was the movie I came up with as a child. I remember Star Wars being about space cowboys, an action movie with sword fighting and starship battles and the womp rats or whatever that they shot. And it was training his shield womp rats. That's why he was so good at hitting the exhaust port on the Death Star and like a real action movie. As an adult, I watch it. My goodness, they spent a lot of time about bureaucratic inefficiencies, leadership being unable to make commanding calls, senates disagreeing and voting or something. And it's like the action is actually few and far between in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I won't shit on Star Wars for the 100th time. Everybody knows how I feel about Star Wars. I think it's bad. I have a different.
Something that holds up. I saw the first Lord of the Rings, I guess, when I was like 11 or 12.
This is 19 years ago.
Holds up.
19 years old, that movie. It's amazing. Have you guys paid attention to Valorant at all?
Don't know what that is.
I know it's a game because I've seen people streaming it, but I don't know what it's about.
Okay, so Valorant is a game. It's very similar to CSGO. People say it's a cross between CSGO and Overwatch because it's kind of cartoony graphics. And the cartoony graphics work. Like I'm not a deep expert in this, but like the smoke in CSGO has like funny edges, and sometimes one guy can see better than the other one. In Valorant, it's smoke, but it's very defined where the smoke starts and stops. It's like a force shield of contained smoke, and it works well for a competitive shooter where you need it to be really balanced and accurate. The movement looks just like CSGO. The crosshairs on the screen, it's precise. It's a competitive shooter. And it's big right now. I remember Kyle introduced us to, is it Apex Legends? Is that the game name?
Yeah.
And he was like, this thing is a big story right now because this many people